Hey everyone, it's Ryan with Romeo Music and welcome to Live Audio 101. Up until this point, we've spent all of our time discussing what componentry you have and its basic functions. Now that we understand everything in your signal chain, let's plug everything in and make sure you're ready to power on correctly. Let's take a look at a simple setup like having a lecturer address a small crowd. First, we'll put the microphones wherever we want them, whether center stage or wherever the artist wants to be set up. Next, we'll place our speakers pointed towards the audience. As you're locating your speakers, keep a couple things in mind. Higher frequencies are more easily absorbed and distorted by most environments, so make sure there's an unobstructed path from the speaker driver to the listener's ear. Generally speaking, if the audience member can see the speaker, they'll have a better chance of hearing it. This is most easily achieved by elevating the speaker and pointing it down towards the audience. When possible, keep the speaker box upright, as the waveguide on most speakers isn't intended to be rotated. To avoid feedback, we'll make sure no speakers are pointed towards any of the microphones. Once you have a general idea of your input and speaker locations, we'll place the mixer and amp controls in a spot where the speakers can be clearly heard. Of note, this is generally less important with digital mixers, as they often have a remote control app that can be used with a tablet or laptop. Once all our equipment is set, let's start plugging in. Remember, each microphone or instrument input will correspond with a channel on the mixer. This image shows our vocalist plugged into the mixer's channel 1 and our piano player into channel 2. We'll then plug our main outputs from the mixer into the amplifier inputs. For now, we'll send the left main to amplifier channel 1 and the right main into amplifier channel 2. Finally, the outputs of our amplifier will be plugged into our speakers, channel 1 into our left speaker and channel 2 into the right. Although the setup itself is pretty straightforward, it can get kind of confusing depending on the different cables you might be using. Let's take a look at a couple things you might find and their respective applications. The XLR cable is going to be your workhorse for inputs and outputs on your mixer. Most microphones will exclusively use an XLR connection, as will most modern amplifiers. Phone plugs, also referred to as quarter-inch or instrument cables, will be your go-to cable for electric or digital instruments. They can come in a couple varieties, and it is important to know the difference. The most common will be your unbalanced TS or tip sleeve cable. Balanced TRS or tip ring sleeve cables can offer improved noise reduction, but be careful as they only work if both your source and your mixer inputs are marked as balanced ports. Combo jacks like these will accept both XLR and balanced phone connections. If you're running a number of channels over a long distance, it's helpful to have a channel snake like this, which combines all of your inputs into one cable that's easier to manage. Some older devices, like tape or CD players, will still use these unbalanced RCA connectors. While many new boards don't support an RCA input, you can easily use an RCA to quarter-inch phone interconnect to plug into a normal channel. Many boards will include a USB port as well. While each board functions differently, most will offer some combination of using the USB port as an input, output, or both. This can be especially useful if you want to play audio files from a computer or take a live recording of what's running through the board. Plugging our mixer into our amplifier will typically be done using phone or XLR cables. Amplifier outputs normally come in a couple different varieties. Speak-on connectors have become the connection of choice as they lock in place and they're easy to repair should anything go wrong. To plug in, simply insert the connector and turn clockwise until it clicks. To unplug, pull back on the locking mechanism before turning counterclockwise and remove the connector. If you use the quarter-inch phone plug, make sure the cable you're plugging into the port is intended for use as a speaker cable. Older amplifiers and cables will feature these exposed terminals as well. These can be used by clamping in stripped wire ends or by using banana plugs like these. If your system is connected using these terminals, make sure both speakers are wired identically, otherwise you'll encounter some serious issues with your sound and can potentially damage your amplifier. Now that everything is connected, it's time to power on. In practice, the only thing you absolutely have to make sure of is powering on your amplifiers last. However, to cover all my bases, I always make sure to follow the chain of signal. I'll start by powering on any of my input sources, followed by the board, and then the amplifier last. In powering off, I simply do the same thing but in reverse. We'll power off the amplifier, the mixer, and then the inputs. Now that everything is set up and plugged in properly, it's time to run your sound check. Drop by next week as we talk through the basics of gain staging and setting your initial level. If you have any other questions about physically setting up your sound system, feel free to call us at 1-800-466-1773 or email us at info@romeomusic.net. Be sure to like and subscribe us so that you can stay current on all things music technology. And thanks for visiting Romeo Music, your source for educational music and performing arts technology.